all women, everyone, needs to have relationships in their lives that count. Studies on health span and living longer lives say that relationships are the most important thing.
It takes courage to be older, to keep on keeping on.
That is truth spoken right there.
I feel bolder and that my voice is stronger than it's ever been.
Community of friends is important as we age, and a community of learning, being around people who want to continue learning. So I keep learning from all my friends all the time.
I want to know if there's anything that you have learned from each other that surprised you. Welcome to Late Bloomer Living, the podcast where we're all about shaking up our ideas about what it means to grow older. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your resident age agitator and play instigator. Around here, we believe midlife is the perfect time to play, to reinvent, and bloom like you mean it. Let's go. Making new friends later in life, it just isn't easy, is it? Today's guests, though, they are two women who prove that it is still possible and that those friendships can become something powerful beyond just that friendship itself. This is very cool. I'm joined by Gail Zelitsky and Catherine Marienau. They are the co-hosts of Women Over 70 Aging Reimagined podcast, and each of them is a force in her own right. They're both lifelong educators. They both have education in their bones. And these days, they are champions for visibility, dignity, and possibility as we age. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to form deep friendships, start something new, or step into your voice more fully, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Gail, Catherine, thank you so much for being with me today.
So happy to be here. Yeah.
So, gosh, where to start? Let's go with the meet cute, as if it's a little rom-com action. How did you meet?
We met because I was going for my master's degree at DePaul University School for New Learning. I had gone back to get a degree after starting some 30 years earlier for a master's degree and had to stop. I'm so glad I waited because who turned out to be my faculty mentor? None other than Catherine Marienau.
So you started off as mentor student.
Yes.
Love that part of your story. How old were you when you went back for that advanced degree?
I must have been, what, 69? Yeah, something like that.
You are my hero. When I think about, sometimes I think about going back to school, I'm just like, whoa.
Never too late.
It is never too late. I personally feel daunted at the thought of it, but that doesn't mean I won't do it at some point. You went back to school after quite the career. I mean, you had a full-on entrepreneurial career, right?
I am a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur. Yeah, from 1977 and through getting my degree, I have always coached, particularly small women business owners. I've been in the liquor business. I have done marketing consulting, different sides of the same business, but always entrepreneurial.
Yeah. And Catherine, you have always been in education, correct?
I've always been in higher education, always in programs that serve adults, so 25 to 85. In innovative programs, individually designed curriculum, strong mentoring relationships.
Were you a professor in the classroom or part of helping adults navigate getting through their degrees?
I was in the classroom. I was also directing degree programs and mentoring. In the School for New Learning setting, one of our foremost responsibilities was to be one-on-one with students, to really work with them as they went through the entire program. If I was someone's mentor, I got to know that person pretty well. Then I also had my classroom teaching responsibilities and then my academic administrative as well.
Gotcha. So, Gail, you said that you had started to get that degree and then went back to do this. What was the degree actually in?
So the degree that I started to get was a true MBA. 30 years later, the degree I went for was in creativity and innovation for small business owners.
That makes complete sense.
Yes.
And so were you a business professor, Catherine? Was that your focus or?
No, in our School for New Learning setting, each student designs his or her own curriculum. As a mentor, no, I often knew nothing about what the students were, they were the experts in their area. I was there to help them figure out what they already knew that they might document for credit, college credit, to help them set a path that was going to get them from where they were to where they wanted to be. Sometimes that changes as they move through the program. So it was a coaching of a sort. Yeah, kind of coaching. But that when I taught courses, it was in a variety of areas, from things that have to do with adult education, curriculum design, facilitating learning, assessing learning. I always taught something around women's issues. That was the mainstay of what I loved teaching about.
That's making a lot of sense based on what you guys are doing now. It's all coming together. I can see all the puzzle pieces just falling right into place.
The thing about when you said the mentor-student relationship, in that setting, we're more peers. I just happen to know a lot more about the higher education world and how to navigate through it and how to really make it, for Gail to make it her own.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get through that program, Gail?
5 years.
5 years. Yeah. Were you still working at that point?
I was working full time.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I said you were a powerhouse. Yeah, I guess so. Both of you.
Well, my husband had just died.
Uh-huh.
It was just the right time for me to go back to school. And so I was able to do that, fit it into my schedule. And it actually was a really good thing because it took my mind off of my loss. I could get deep into what this was going to be.
What were your first impressions of each other?
I don't think I've ever really thought about that.
Don't know either.
How long have you known each other now?
Since I was 69 and now I'm 84.
Okay. Wow.
Math, right.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah, it could be hard to remember.
16 years, yes, right.
Yeah.
I was very happy to get Catherine because others had talked about her and said I was lucky to have her as a mentor. That definitely turned out to be true. She's always had white hair, very striking. We just really hit it off from the beginning, I think. Or else she pretended she hit it off with me because I was her job.
Well, one of the real benefits of working in that setting was I worked with students a wide range of ages, of course, but I loved working with older, more mature women. We could connect with each other, not just on the school level, but also personal level. We started sharing some personal stories when you were still in the student
yes,
role.
definitely.
And you get to go out for dinner and lunch and have your planning conversations in a more social setting. It's just more of an intimate relationship.
Was there a moment when you realized that this was more than a mentor-student connection, like that this had friendship legs beyond what you were doing there?
I knew that I wanted to continue meeting with her, that she was of interest to me, both personally and professionally. And I loved her ideas, and we would brainstorm a lot. And so we continued having dinner after I graduated.
Some of my really close friends since I've been in the Chicago area have come through my former students. There's not a lot, but some of the deepest friendships that I've formed have been through that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, they're just fascinating people, right? And shared values and very creative, and as Gail, very entrepreneurial, always wanting to make a difference for themselves and others. It's always been inspiring for me.
How long after you finished the program, Gail, did Women Over 70 come into being?
So I graduated in 2015. And we started Women Over 70 in 2019.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
was there a moment when you decided that this was something you wanted to do together? Did you know it was a podcast right away?
The way the story goes, which is not a story, it's the truth. My son had ventured into podcasting early on, before it was really something that everybody was talking about. He started to run these new media summits, and he would put together podcaster wannabes and podcaster icons who were ahead of the curve, already bringing in interest for their podcasts. I would go to these and support him and do what I could to help out at the summit. But I went to, I think, four of them. By the time I went to the last one, I really got the bug. I wanted to do a podcast. I was really interested in women in their 70s and the decades after that. I'm sitting and having dinner with Catherine one night at one of our meetings, and I say to her, I think I'm going to interview 70 women over 70 and see what that looks like. See if I can find out more about who they are and what life is like so that I will understand the decades that ensued. She looked at me and said,
That sounds so wonderful. It's so fascinating. I'd like to do that with you if you'll have me. I was thinking about leaving my full-time position at DePaul. I knew I always wanted to continue to do something around women's issues and women's development. I love doing qualitative research, interviewing, and I had no clue what a podcast was. I had no idea what that was. Didn't know what it meant. But when she said she wanted to interview women over 70, I thought, well, I want to do that too. And so I invited myself.
she invited herself in.
I love it. Were there any big shifts for either of you or both of you internally during that transition? What I'm wondering is what was the driving force behind wanting to do those interviews? I have a reason for doing this podcast, right? For
Mhm.
me, it was realizing as I was approaching the age of 50 that I had this internalized ageism. I had an aha moment that I needed to take better care of myself when I was about 48. I started a morning routine and started taking better care of myself. I started to get more hopeful about my future. I started to think about, I was like, wow, I'm almost 50. I feel better now than I felt all through my 40s. And if I take
Mhm.
care of myself, who knows how long I'm going to live? But if
Mhm.
I've got another 30, who knows, even 40 years ahead of me, what am I going to do with all that time? At that point, I realized that I had been telling myself it was too late to do anything else outside what I already knew how to do. And once I realized that I'd been holding myself back that way for at least a decade, because I had been telling myself things like, why does everybody else have this life thing figured out and I don't?
Mhm.
And I started to think, well, maybe I'm not the only person who feels like that. Maybe there are other people in midlife who also feel that way. And wouldn't that be a cool podcast to talk to people who came up against it, felt stuck, and then found their way through it? Wouldn't that be cool to do to inspire people like me 4 or 5 years ago? Took me 2 years to actually put the podcast together from the time I got that idea, but it had its time. So I'm wondering for you guys, what was that internal drive?
Again, because I spent my entire professional life working with older students, and the majority were women, and listening to their stories and getting very invested in their lives and what they were wanting to accomplish. A lot of these stories are shared in a classroom in very limited settings. Women's stories are so remarkable. They need to be told, they need to be out there. And I think the more we can share women's stories, the more we can do to mitigate against some of these myths and stereotypes about what's it like to get older and to become old. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to really showcase women who are smart, and engaged and caring and constantly involved in contributing in a variety of different ways. I wanted to be part of that, helping them share their stories. We talk about this notion of becoming invisible. We've felt that, and we certainly hear that from many women certainly when you get 70 and beyond. And so there's no reason for us to be invisible. We have tremendous amount of insight and wisdom and lessons to share.
I agree. It's funny because I don't normally feel invisible. And I think it's because of this podcast. I feel like I have learned finally in my 50s to use my voice. But I was at the drugstore just yesterday picking up a couple of small items, and I went to the front and almost did the self-check, and I was like, oh, there's no line. It's just a couple of items. So I went up to the front desk, and there was a guy who seemed like he was the one with an open register. And then there were two other women behind the desk also, and all three of them stayed completely engrossed in whatever they were doing. And I'm 2 feet away from all of them, standing with two items in the traditional spot where a person would check out. I waited and thought, oh, they're finishing a task, but there was no, I'll be with you in a minute. There was no acknowledgement that I was a person standing in front of them until finally I said, are any of you have an open register? And then, like I hadn't been there the whole time. The guy looks up and goes, oh, yeah, I'll help you. And then was fine and all that. And I was like, wow, that was definitely an invisibility moment. That was crazy. I could have
Yes.
completely walked out of the store with those items and nobody would have noticed.
And then taking that a step further, imagine if we're talking about a woman who has had a career, who is now in her 70s, 80s, 90s, and still has so much to give. We deliberately interview vital, vibrant women so they can share their stories of how they continue to make a difference. It has become a form of activism for us to negate the narrative being told about older women and to show that this is not true at all. Each one of the 370 guests we've interviewed is a force of nature. No matter what that force has been doing, taking care of spouses and children and, in caregiver mode or teaching.
That's invisible work, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Cleaning out ponds throughout the eastern seaboard. Older women dive into ponds to clean out garbage.
Wow.
Old ladies.
Underwater
Thank you,
garbage.
Catherine, against other underwater
Wow.
garbage. Yeah,
And did you say it's over 370 episodes?
that's right.
That's incredible. That is a huge accomplishment. I feel pretty chuffed with my like 250 something. Okay, so here's a question I have before I go into the next thing I want to ask you. I definitely had my own issues with internalized ageism and the story that I was telling myself, starting probably from about the time I was in my 40s, I would say 40-ish. It might have even started at 35, but somewhere in there is when I started to tell myself that it was too late or I put limits on myself. Do either of you ever, or do you now ever notice, oh, look what I'm doing to myself? Oh,
Mhm.
that's a little sneaky ageism that I'm heaping on myself right there. Does that ever happen to you guys?
I notice it mostly in terms of what I can do physically, what I used to do. And so I have to watch that I'm not telling myself the story, well, you can't do that anymore. You're older. Because as you were talking about self-care, with enough self-care, I could still be hiking mountain paths if I wanted. Many of the students I had when I started were older than I was. So I've always been around more mature people, mature learners. And I became a parent for the first time when I was 41. So my path is a little different from many. And so I've not really thought much in terms of my age or limitations. I've just sort of pursued what I wanted to pursue. So for me, it's mainly the physical.
Yes, I go through periods where my inner ageist voice rises up and makes me feel like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Or well, who do you think you are to continue doing that? Recently, I raced in a race. That's an exaggeration. And it was a 5K, which is 3.2 miles. And that would be absolutely nothing for me most of the time. However, I found it hard. And mostly I found it hard because I was walking, we were walking with two other younger women. They had all this energy and they were going and going, and I just couldn't really keep up with them, and they were accommodating me. And after that, that voice was raging inside of me. Oh, you're too old to do these things. Why do you think you can keep doing all of whatever you want to be doing? You have to stop it. You have to really just say to yourself, okay, look at all the things I can do. Look at what I can accomplish and be grateful that you can still do those things and do what you do well. Keep doing it.
I love that answer. And Catherine, what you said about having always been surrounded by women who were older women doing amazing things, there's something to that. And that's why the work that you're doing is so important, because you are amplifying the voices of those women and giving example to other women to say, hey, cut that out. You don't have to tell
Right.
yourself that story, because look over here, this is what's possible. It's one of the reasons I love doing the podcast, is that I am surrounded by these guests and people and examples and potential guests, even, where I look and go, oh, that's what's possible.
Mm.
And that keeps me going. And that checks the rampant toddler like thing in my brain going, nah, 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 you're too old.
That's one of the impetuses that keeps us going because we find them also inspiring to us, keeps us going too.
How do you balance celebrating that vibrancy later in life with the honest acknowledgement of those real challenges like loss, or health shifts, or isolation that tends to come up later in life?
We don't gloss over the realities of life. In interviewing these women, we are interested in their whole journey, not just the activities they do that tell us they're still really going. So many of them have experienced loss. They have experienced illness of all kinds. And that's part of our stories, isn't it? We want to hear about it all and see how, in spite of these things that happen to us, we are able to keep going and keep giving.
I've found with a lot of my guests that it's also been because of the things that have happened to them that they have had that change their life and give them new meaning.
Our guests have, and working with Gail has certainly given me more self-awareness, more insight into myself and my own journey and how I want to live, how I want to contribute. And it's inspiring. It takes courage to be older, to keep on keeping on.
That is truth spoken
And
right there.
I feel bolder and that my voice is stronger than it's ever been. And it's really because of being involved in the podcasts that we do, the women that we interact with. And I have a younger daughter. I'm 76. She's 35. So there's that youth. I'm surrounded by youthfulness.
Yeah. So speaking of having that younger daughter, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, is not so much about your daughter, but what do you think younger listeners who might be listening to your podcast would get out of the stories that you're telling that they wouldn't otherwise hear without your podcast existing in the world?
I think it really depends on each person's environment, what they've been exposed to already. What's your experience of someone who's 70 or 80 or 90? My daughter doesn't listen to our podcast, but she loves to promote it. She likes telling her friends, my mom is so cool. She's doing this and that. They're like, wow, she's 76 and she's doing all those things. That's amazing. I think it's exposure. We're role models.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sister who's 6 years younger than I am. And two of her friends came to visit me in the last year. Both of them took time to write to me afterward to say how motivated they feel, how inspired they feel by the kinds of things that I'm involved in, which is, again, showing how older women, this is what we look like. This is how we live. This is how we make a difference. It's taking some of the mystery out of this notion of getting older, and that they, of course, they can do much more. Already, I think some younger women are putting limitations on, saying, well, I'm not going to be able to do those kinds of things. But of course you can.
What are your thoughts on that, Gail?
Well, I totally agree with what Catherine just said, because our goal is to have younger listeners who will be inspired by what they hear and will carry this positive narrative of aging into their lives as they get older. One of the things that we talk about is how being older is not just retirement and then you're old. We want to change the whole narrative around how all our stages of life look. And that really they're transitions from one stage into another, and that we are capable of doing something. We all age from the moment we are born. Aging is not anything new. We want people to be able to see how we're just in another transition of life, doing things a little bit differently, but still very much a part of life, giving back and contributing. We're publishing a book tentatively titled Women Aging, Reimagining Age, Place, and Possibilities. What Catherine was talking about earlier about the myths and truths of life are a big part of this book. And the various attributes that we see that we call 6 C's, but how they are really flames of our lives. And we need to be conscious about them. We just sent the manuscript into the editor, and we hope he likes it as much as we do.
Congratulations. So you've reached that draft point and are ready for an editor to take a look, and
We are, right?
that's epic. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is that I noticed in looking around your website that your podcast listing, you have categories. So I poked around in your categories. You've got advocates for women aging, enhancing career, expressive arts, get real. I want to know more about that one. Health and wellness, play. I personally like that. And reinvention, a couple of my favorite topics. Why did those particular categories stand out for you guys?
The categories emerged after we'd done maybe 100 or 150 episodes. We thought, how are people, how are people going to, what do they want to listen to? What will draw them? How are they clustering? We have many guests who are social activists. So that was a very clear category. Quite a few are very much into spirituality and healing. That was another. Others are continuing to do the kind of work that they've always done professionally. They might be in a different setting, and maybe as a volunteer now and not as a paid CEO. So there's that enhancing the career. They're organic categories.
And the one that I was curious about, the get real. Tell me more about that category.
Oh, I wish we could.
Actually, that was short-lived.
Oh, okay.
People kept saying to us, we want to hear from you. So we started a series called Get Real, and the two of us would talk about a topic. together and not have a guest on that show.
Okay, I get that. That's probably a great little series to listen to. That's
It's
fantastic.
very short-lived, as Gail said. I think we found, truthfully, we found our guests so interesting that we don't want to take that spot.
Mm-hmm.
Just have too
Exactly.
many women we want to put out there. So we'll find a different way. We do a lot of speaking engagements, and the book will be coming out in the next several months. We're finding other ways to get our voices out there, but not podcast time.
Is there any one thing that you wish that every woman over 40 understood about the decades ahead of her?
Go ahead, Catherine.
Gail already mentioned it, and I think it's this notion that we will always be dealing with some kind of change. We will always be in transition. Mm. There is no point in life that I can imagine where things are so steady for such a long period of time. There's always some aspect of our life that's undergoing change, and we need to adapt and adjust and find how we're going to now how are we going to navigate now. And so I think it's for the younger women to see that as opportunity and possibility, because we can always redesign parts of our lives. I don't think we ever need to be stuck in one path. Most of the women we interview say, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a life plan. I didn't think I had no idea I was going to become this or do this. But they were open, so open to possibilities, and they also were very brave and opening doors that were shut. So it's that we are the designers of our own lives. That's I think an important message.
There's something else I'd like to add, and that is that all women, everyone, needs to have relationships in their lives that count. Studies on health span and living longer lives say that relationships are the most important thing, the social aspect of your life. Don't close off. Stay open to new possibilities, to new relationships, and stay open to having mentors in your life who will help you along the way, and just be open. I want to tell all these young women, be open and willing to listen and to learn. Throughout life. You must learn and have experiences, adventures, and make opportunities for lives that are full.
I have two questions that are a little more personal. I want to know if there's anything that you have learned from each other that surprised you.
Hmm. I think I recognized who Catherine was from the time I met her, and she hasn't disappointed me. One of the things that surprises me about you, Catherine, is that I sometimes see you more in an academic position because you are a dyed-in-the-wool academic. But then I see flares from her of she's not academic at all. She's interested in all aspects of life, willing to go for adventure and whatever that can mean. I appreciate that in her.
I think you're giving academic kind of a bad name, but that's okay. Because it's funny
Like
because
academics.
I've never really considered myself a true academic. I've always been on the margins, on the edge, doing the experimenting and innovative programs. I do love ideas. I love theory. I love trying to figure out how to put models and theories into practice. I like looking for patterns. I like writing. I like the process of writing. It's painful. I'm learning to write in a non-academic voice, which is great. I always got a paycheck for what I love doing. I did what I loved, and then I got paid for it. It just didn't connect for me. Through Gail, I've really had to learn her entrepreneurial way of looking at things. What surprised me about what she's helped me learn is I need to be thinking about revenue. I need to be thinking about if we do this, is it what beyond getting, a great sense of fulfillment, is there something else that can come of this? I'm slowly developing a business sense.
I am slowly developing a business sense also, Catherine.
And
So,
it's not easy.
no, it is not. No, it is not. What brings you joy outside of the podcast, and how does that then feed back into the work that you do together?
For me, what Gail said about relationships, friendships, just having really deep, meaningful friendships with a variety of people, different ages, different walks of life, being able to share experiences with them. Travel. I love travel, but right now I prefer to travel if I'm going to be with someone I care about, or if I'm going to a place because it's something that we want to share together. It's not just, I would go anywhere. I didn't care just to see something new. Now I'm more discerning, and I want it to be more relational. I enjoy my daughter's company.
Mhm.
And that's all I'm going to say.
How about for you, Gail?
Very similar to that, of course. I have always said my bags are always packed. I'll go anywhere at any time. And you asked the question before, what changes? That's one of the things that has changed, that it's just not so easy to pick up and go anywhere at any time. I also have family that I'm very close and loving family that is close to me, children, grandchildren, stepchildren, step-grandchildren, and I'm very fortunate in that regard to have so many of them, and other relatives, cousins who are just really close. So I like to go see them when I can. They're not all here in this area where I live. I love being with my friends. I have a friend from kindergarten. We're still friends today. That's almost 80 years that we've
That
been
is
friends.
amazing. That is so great.
Several from high school when we first met in high school. And then, of course, along the way, lots of wonderful friends. I feel that a community of friends is important as we age, and a community of learning, being around people who want to continue learning. So I keep learning from all my friends all the time.
Yeah, I'm hearing from both of you this idea of the relationships that you enjoy. How
Mhm.
does that joy seep back into the work that you're doing?
I think it's partly in how we approach doing the podcasts,
Mhm.
because we want to form some kind of relationship with each guest before we do the interview. One of us will spend an hour or more talking with that person, just getting some sense of sort of life story and what's really important to her, and how to spend that 30 minutes of an interview where she gets to talk about what really matters to her, especially in her current age and looking forward. I think we talk about we're always feeling inspired because we're always learning something
Yes.
with and from our guests and each other.
We always say that this podcast is not about us at all. That's probably one of the reasons we stopped the Get Real episodes, because it's all about the women we interview. It's their stories we want the world to hear. And we sure have learned a lot over all these years of doing this.
I love and appreciate the work that you're doing and the reasons why you're doing it. So you have the book coming out. You guys are doing some speaking. And is there anything else that you're excited about that's coming up?
You want more?
That's a lot, right? What am I asking for here?
We ran 2 years in a row, we ran wonderful in-person symposia. We want to have people come together. And so we're always thinking about how can we get people in person to listen and to hear and to learn from each other and from others. And so I'm excited about what this year is going to bring. We don't know for sure yet, but we're working on it. We love to speak to organizations. We have a new signature talk that we've presented, and it went over really, really well. So we're excited about that. All about what we talk about in our book, really, the myths and truths and the attributes that women have and how they become flames in our lives. And we just keep moving on.
There you have it. So where can people find you after this?
Womenover70.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Come join an Aging Reimagined Circle meeting, which meets once a month on the third Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And listen to our podcasts.
I am really excited because the timing of this episode coming out, and I'm going to be part of your circle.
You are presenting for us on
Soon.
February 17th.
Say more about
Hey,
what
aren't
you're
we?
presenting, because we're so excited about this.
I am too. I can't remember the actual title that we came up with, other than maybe it's like Play is Serious Business or something like that.
Close enough, right?
Yes, I am really excited to come and talk to your community. And as we wrap up, for those of you listening, first of all, Gail and Catherine, I just want to say how grateful I am for this conversation. Your friendship and the work that you're doing through Women Over 70 is such a powerful reminder that it isn't ever too late to find your people, build something meaningful together with someone. And if you're looking for community and connection, be sure to check out their Aging Reimagined Circle. That's the community that Gail and Catherine have put together. Beautiful space for conversation and learning and belonging. So check it out. And if this conversation resonated with you and you're craving a little more curiosity and connection and play in your life, I want to invite you to join the wait list for my play shop. You can check that out at latebloomerliving.com/play. I am all tongue-tied. But anyway, it's a guided experience to help you connect with joy and possibility where you are now and incorporate it into your everyday. I'll have that link for you in the show notes. I'll also have links to all things Gail and Catherine related. Thank you both for the advocacy and the example that you set. And to everyone listening, I'm so glad you're here. Until next time, bloom like you mean it.